Good morning and welcome to the National Newspaper Publishers Association's Let It Be Known. Journalist, author, and TV show host Touré's career has spanned major networks and cable outlets both as a host and a contributor. He hosted The Cycle on MSNBC, Hip Hop Shop on Fuse, The Black Carpet on BET, I'll Try Anything Once on Treasure HD, and Spoke and Heard on MTV. Touré also was the first pop culture correspondent on CNN. A respected voice in the community, Touré consistently lends that voice to amplify causes for social justice and political awareness. He now has a new show called Masters of the Game on Byron Allen's The Grio. A new show.
Yeah.
How excited are you, and what can we expect?
Masters of the Game, very excited. It's a very cool opportunity to do long form, one-on-one interviews with really interesting, fascinating, inspiring Black people, and really get at their mastery, their wisdom, their genius. So folks can say, okay, if I want to do what he or she is doing, here's how I can do this, or here's some advice I can pass on to somebody else. So it's really exciting, to talk to people like Tyler Perry, Debbie Allen, Kenan Thompson, about their mastery, their genius, their brilliance. It's been really amazing.
Yeah. So for years, and some of the people that you've named, for years, these people, it wasn't something that happened overnight for them. And they're still doing things continuously. So when you talk about masters or mastery, kind of just share what you're looking for the viewers to be excited more about.
I mean, when you talk to somebody like Tyler Perry, and there's a lot of thoughts about him in our community, but there's no question that this is one of the most prolific, one of the most important, one of the most successful directors of our time, and trying to get at, what you did and how you did that. And, there was a really interesting moment within that where he talked about his speed, the speed with which he makes the projects is critical to his business model, which I didn't expect.
Because a lot of times people criticize that, right?
Yes, but what he's talking about is that he goes to the studio or whoever, and if they give you a $10 million budget, let's say, they're gonna need to own that project. We've given you so much. And he's like, what is the most that I can get from you as far as a budget and retain ownership of that property?
That's good.
So if I'm getting, let's say, I'm throwing out a number, $1 million budget, the studio is much more willing to talk about, okay, you can continue to own that because that's you're asking far less of us. So that insight, that moment, that conversation, that imperative is critical to him becoming a billionaire and having the power to make whatever he wants and to have this studio that he owns, which is extraordinary. So, finding those sort of nuggets has been really, really fascinating.
Yeah, and Touré, you've been doing this a long time. When you, as a journalist, when we talk to people, we learn a lot about them, or we try to anyway. But in talking to all these people, have you learned about yourself?
What have I learned about myself? I really enjoy listening inside of what people are saying. Sometimes the job is about trying to discern what it is that they want to talk about. So you're kind of listening for what do they keep mentioning? What do they keep sort of dancing toward or alluding to, so that I can make sure that I'm having the conversation that they want to have. But also part of interviewing is making the guest feel really, really heard, on a deep level. Like when you sit and talk to me for an hour or whatever, you should walk away feeling like nobody heard me and really listened to me as deeply and intently as my whole day as he did. And
Right.
if you can feel that, then you will want to be engaged in the conversation. You'll want to give me your thoughts and feelings. So that's been really, really interesting.
How did you guys come up with the concept for this? Did they already have a concept and just come to you with it? Or were you like, there's some people I really want to kind of know more about their journeys and kind of see how they mastered the game?
No, it's more of the former. You think about Byron Allen, who is not just a business mind, but is also a creative person and has worked in front of the camera for many years and has been on stage for many years. So, he comes up with a lot of great ideas that we can execute, and our sort of the main sort of creative person at the company, Geraldine Mariba, is also has a great creative background in terms of making documentaries and podcasts and lots of different things. So she's also coming up with a lot of ideas. So, this was definitely something that came down to me, and we think that you would be good at handling this opportunity. So, and I love doing long form interviews with really interesting people. So this has been a lot of fun.
Yeah, and this Byron Allen's the Grio. It's pretty new, relatively new. It's a new challenge, I'm sure. But can you talk about the challenge you have or you may have with this?
The challenge with this show, you mean? It hasn't felt like a challenge so much as an opportunity, because, I've spent a lot of my career in all sorts of institutions. And when you get the rare opportunity to work for a predominantly Black company where your leadership, your peers, and your audience are Black, it's quite refreshing and endearing. And we're all speaking the same sort of language. We value the same sorts of people, and obviously we're not a monolith. I wrote a whole book about that. But the community, the culture has a sort of cohesive nature. When you say Debbie Allen, everyone's like, yes, master, genius, brilliant, I want to hear what she has to say. I worked at another prominent place many years ago where I said, I want to do an interview with Sonia Sanchez. And people were like, who is that? And who is that, in a sort of dismissive way of I don't know who that is. You should prove it to me, rather than, oh, maybe I should go figure it out who that person is. That right. And those sort of conversations would never happen here. When we're talking about those Black legends that could be on Masters of the Game, everybody in the room knows who these people are and values their contributions to the culture.
Yeah, how frustrating is that, having to sell at other networks, non-Black networks, when you have a Sanchez or someone else? How frustrating is that for you as an African American, trying to sell that interview to that network?
Yeah, it's definitely frustrating. You're quite often the only Black person in the room, or maybe there's one other Black person in the room, and these white people, even if they're allies or they say they're allies, they may not fully understand, the importance of different aspects of Black culture or Black news stories. And to be at a place like the Grio, where people get it, and I don't have to argue with people about, the value of Black Lives Matter, or the importance of, the Black heroes that we love. That means a lot.
Yeah, so this was a marriage that was inevitable, right? I mean, when you think about your journey and Byron Allen's journey,
Right.
it
They're
seems
both
like that was
masters in their own right, honestly.
I appreciate that. I mean,
good. Yeah.
I appreciate that. I mean, I have been I've known Byron for a little while. I've known Geraldine for a long while, and them wanting me to be part of the Grio team was definitely quite an honor.
Mm,
Yeah,
you hear it like
I know, right?
it's like, oh,
I can feel it.
yeah, yeah. So when you said earlier on the interview, where you were talking about you like long form style things or what have you, a lot of people don't, because we have, when people are viewing things on social media or even with television, short attention spans, and coming up with this concept with the show, what are some things that you had to do for yourself, even though you've been in the industry, you've known these people? What is it that you had to do as far as researching to find the questions or something in their background that maybe no one else had touched on? Like, how hard did you have to do that?
If you're going to do an hour-long interview, I mean, I'm probably going to do 6, 7, 8 hours of at least of
Mm.
consuming your
Say that
content.
again. 6, 7, 8 hours, because I want the younger journalists to
Right.
understand this isn't a quick Google search.
No, no. I mean, like, I'm reading all these different articles about you. I'm
Mm.
consuming your content, be it, watching a ton of SNL for Keenan Thompson, watching a bunch of Grey's Anatomy for Debbie Allen, and just sort of thinking about, what has this person accomplished? What were they trying to
Mhm.
accomplish? What are things that they succeeded at that were very difficult? Um, but also I talk a lot about the question list. Much of it will be specific to you, but I also try to think about what would I ask anybody who is an actor. So all the questions shouldn't be specific to the one individual, but to this group of artists or business people or whatever. um, but also you want to think about who they are as a person and their journey. I also want to think about how they are as a communicator. So you definitely watch other interviews that they've done. How have they answered certain questions? Are they talkative? Are they not? What subjects are they talkative on? You definitely want to know what sort of pattern of conversation you're going to have with them, so that you can be prepared for folks who are like, I don't really like going in that direction. So we would do that gently. They may be short, they may be long winded. But I want to be, I want to know if you've done significant interviews before that I can study to then understand who you are as a communicator.
So this is more of like a full hour of an interview that's like a master class, because you know how we have different people
Yep.
who are doing master classes and things of that nature, which became a thing during the pandemic, but they're talking at you, you're like hearing their skill set and all
Yep.
of that, but you never really get to humanize or understand them as a person. So that's what this sounds like you're
Yeah,
looking forward to
yeah.
doing.
Yeah, I want to know who you are, where you came from, how you became a master, a genius, a brilliant person, and your thoughts and opinions on your craft, such that
Mhm.
others can understand more deeply what you're doing and why you're doing it at a high level.
Well, me personally, when they told me about Masters of the Game, I was like, oh, I'm excited about this. And then you were doing it. I was like, oh yes, Touré, yes. Um, but when I looked at some of the people, I went on Grio's Twitter page, and Jennifer King. Oh my God. Like, a lot of people don't really know her full story. And I know that the NFL has tried to highlight women in sports. And I just think it's amazing that we have, Black media that is getting behind
Yep.
women like her to kind of put her in front of the camera to say, listen, she's not just a coach on the field. Like, let me tell you who she is and what she's had to go through to get here. And I think that that's going to help a lot of young people, especially young women who want to work in sports, and maybe coaching could be a thing for them.
Yeah, no, you talk to someone like Jennifer King, the only African American woman on an NFL coaching staff right now. And I definitely want to talk about issues around coaching for anyone, but
Mm.
also there's so that any coach could watch this and be like, okay, so there's some nuggets that I can take into my coaching. But also,
Right.
this is a woman who is being successful at being heard in a very male dominated space. And
Mhm.
even if you're not an athlete or a coach, there's a lot of women who can say, I'm working in a male dominated space. How do I
Mhm.
get these men to listen to me? And I really wanted to talk to her about that, it's just so that any woman who feels herself in a similar area can say, okay, so Jennifer King said such and such, that makes sense to me.
Mm. I like
Yeah,
that.
yeah, I like that too. And we're talking with the legendary Touré, masters of the game, the Grio, Byron Allen's
Yes.
the Grio. Fridays, every last Friday of the month. I understand, Touré. Touré, you again. We know your history. Many know your history. To not know Touré's history, you got to be living under a rock.
Like, come on.
But you faced, well, not faced, but you've talked to so many people. What has been your most challenging interview?
Oh, yeah.
That's a great question. There's a couple that come to mind, but I think a lot about a long time ago. I spoke with Courtney Love, remember the rock star, and we were supposed to speak for an hour. It's like 5 minutes into it, she's like, I'm done with this. I'm leaving soon. And we can't run a 10 or 15-minute interview. We need an hour. This is a long time ago at another network. And she was just being really, really difficult and not really wanting to answer the questions and being very standoffish. And, you know, I, I'm, I think that so much of the core of my media project, or my being part of media, is about trying to find the subject that the other person wants to talk about. If you just go in there imposing your questions on the moment, you'll miss it. You need to let the other person tell you what they want to talk about, or at least find the things that they want to talk about. And when I realized that, I finally came around to a subject that she wanted to talk about, and then she opened up. The body language changed, the tone of voice changed, and everything was different. And it was like, okay, now we've come through the clearing and forest to oh, here's the oasis. And then everything got more relaxed and more calm, and I could actually do my job. But yeah, there's definitely days where the interviewer is really working for it because the guest isn't really giving you that much.
Any plans to talk about Brittany Griner?
I mean, not as present, to talk about Brittany on Masters of the Game. I mean, you know, when, not if, but when she's released, perhaps that becomes an opportunity. But that's something that many other things would have to happen first. But I mean, I find that situation to be incredibly tragic and sad, and the continued criminalization, global criminalization, but also in this country of marijuana, of very small amounts of personal use of marijuana, is very troubling and outdated. Would like to see the country legalize marijuana federally, in 50 states, and let the millions of nonviolent marijuana users to go free who are in prison. But also, part of what's happening with the Brittany Griner story, which is so tragic, is that the great female basketball players must go overseas in the WNBA's offseason in order to make enough money to continue being full-time basketball players, which is kind of sad. So I mean, Brittany wouldn't be in this situation if the system was not supporting her, the system itself is a bit messed up. And I think quite often it's very easy to look at individuals and to blame individuals. And folks may say, well, all she had to do was not bring it in her bag. Okay, but I think it's more important and more valuable to look at the systems that create these situations. The continued global prohibition on marijuana does not make sense. If she had had a small bottle of whiskey in her bag, that would be okay. But a small amount of this is suddenly not okay. That doesn't make a lot of sense. Especially at a time when some countries are like, this is legal, some are not. The notion that she has to go somewhere else to make a living does not make sense. So there's systems that have helped put her in this position. But let's also not lose sight of the fact that Russia is ultimately a corrupt country that has taken her so that they can make a deal with America that will benefit them. This is not about Russia making some just arrest in their country. That is absolutely not what's happening at all. They are using her as a pawn to get us to release somebody. We may not now or ever know what their real intention was here. But that's ultimately what's going on. That Russia has taken one of our people. They had a small window of opportunity. They've used that, and they're going to squeeze this individual so that they can get somebody of theirs out.
Yeah. Regarding politics, is there a possibility for you to interview someone like a politician, maybe i.e. a former president or something, to be on Masters of the Game,
I mean, that would be the dream. We're
Or a nightmare.
Oh, no.
Every amazing Black person you can think of is on our wish list. So we'll see.
That's awesome.
Yeah, well, and speaking of wish lists, I know you've written several books. Now, I'm going to bring up one in particular.
There? He's going there.
Yes, I would die for you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
What was that like, putting that together? I mean, obviously you did it. I believe it was released in 2017, so a year after Prince's death. What was that like, putting that together at that time?
I Would Die for You came out before Prince passed away, and really part of the thought was I didn't see a great serious book about him and his life and career, and I wanted to create that, and I think we did. I had at that point a lot of Prince family members, and by that I don't mean like the literal family, but the chosen family, the musical family.
Right.
Okay.
Were friends or were people I could reach out to. I'm like, well, if I know all these people who know him, work with him, I could probably talk to them, talk to a few of their friends, and create something that was really interesting. And I talked to a lot of people in his world for that book. And I think I made a fairly compelling argument about who he is in the world.
Yeah, and we on this show we had the opportunity a couple of times to have Jerome Benton and Brown Mark, and both, of course, have some great Prince stories. And Jerome, of course, Prince's sidekick, not only in Purple Rain but Under the Cherry Moon and on stage.
Well, Jerome is such an amazing resource as far as Prince, because they go back to Minneapolis. So Jerome knew him as a teenager and also as a young man, and also as an incredibly successful grown man. And Jerome was able to talk about, because Prince left his father's home. He left his mother's home and then his father's home, and then went to live with somebody else from about the age of 12 or 13. And that woman he lived with was extremely maternal and nurturing, and helped him get from being a young teenager to the end of his teens. And Jerome knew her. So, anybody who could talk about, that, I mean, and I had thought, wow, how extraordinary they landed over here in this woman's house, and he was like, well, she was a second mother to so many of us and was this huge maternal figure in the neighborhood. So really, if you lived in the neighborhood and you knew her, uh, you would not be surprised. Bernadette Anderson was her name. You would not be surprised, out of all the places, where would a boy end up who's run away and like not really knows where to go? Like her house. Now, of course, her youngest son and Prince were super close, and Andre Simone, and he was deeply into music. I mean, then as at any time in his life, Prince really didn't have any use for you if you were not able to be into music and talk about music on a deep level. And so, he and Andre had a deep musical relationship. So that's part of why he ended up there. But this woman was so beautifully maternal. And I hadn't had anybody who was able to really put their finger on that before Jerome was able to. But also, because Jerome spans so many eras of Prince's life, it was really fascinating to hear him say, I've never seen him sleep. I have been on tour with him. I knew him as a teenager. I've never seen him sleep. I don't know when he goes to sleep. We'll be hanging out in Brazil. I go to sleep. He's still awake. I wake up. He's already awake. No, and a lot of people talked about that he sort of seemed like a day walker or something. But they were like, when does he sleep? We do not know.
Mhm.
Yeah, his the night he was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, he did a show in New York afterwards that started as like a place called Club Black, and perhaps Touré may remember that. But 2:30 in the morning, he gets on stage. What time he got off stage? 6:30.
Sure.
Wow.
But we don't want to only talk about Prince. I know.
No,
I just had to get that
I
off my
knew it was
chest.
coming. I was gonna let you have that, okay? But Touré, for you, what do you see happening with Masters of the Game, like beyond it? Like what's the goal besides showing, the magistry and showing people another side of these people that you're interviewing? Like what's the main overall goal?
The goal is to have them talk about their mastery, their craft, their brilliance, such that you walk away with nuggets of wisdom that you can use in your life, or that you can give to others for their journey, as advice. So, we're talking to people who are geniuses, and we want to understand how they see the world, how they see their craft, how they approach things. That's what's really, really important to me.
All right. We enjoyed that conversation with Touré as he talked about his plans and the new Masters of the Game show, which airs every month, once a month at the last Friday of the month, actually, on the Grio. We heard about his reverence for Tyler Perry and what Tyler had to say, and also as journalists, what he learned about himself, among other things. And don't forget, as a programming note, tune in this evening at 6 p.m. Instagram Live. Dr. Ben Chavis, our president and CEO, will join the National Urban League as they discuss Black Media Matters and the Black Press Matters. 6 p.m. on the Instagram Live of the National Urban League at Nat Urban League. Check it out at 6 p.m. Thanks for joining Let It Be Known. We will see you soon.